So I'm here with Menno Henselmans. He's down in Mexico. Um, Menno Henselmans runs BayesianBodybuilding.com, and he's got a blossoming PT course that he's been promoting lately, and it's one of the few PT courses that I would highly recommend to people. Check out his website, BayesianBodybuilding.com. He writes a lot of very relevant, very non-biased, well-researched articles, and he's one of the top guys in his field. Menno, I've got loads of questions for you today. Yeah, let's jump.
Yeah, just fire away. We'll see where it goes.
All right, man. So, well, first of all, where are you right now? Let's give a little geographical.
I'm in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. It's like way on the east southern side in the tropical area, close to Belize. Very touristic city. It's great because you have like sort of first world accommodations combined with like third world tropical wildlife that's relatively unharmed by humans.
Yeah, it's funny. So we've got two genetically Northern European guys. You're Dutch, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, my family's also from the Netherlands, or half of my family is from the Netherlands, and we're in these tropical places, and we still can't get a tan. So I don't understand what the problem with our genetics is. We got poor tanning genetics. We get big shoulders, but no tanning gains.
Yeah, well, I tan really easily, but here you don't tan, you burn, and I hate tanning. Like, I very occasionally do it just because I don't have any vitamin D supplements, but I really hate it, especially here. You just lie somewhere and you're suffering. That's what it is. That's really what it entails.
Yeah,
like sweat pouring out of you. I can't even use my my tablet because that's what I like to do. So at least I'm doing something productive. I read articles or something.
Yeah.
But I can't even use that because the tablet is black and it actually overheats if I use it in the sun here. So.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's not so hot here in Ecuador where I'm at. We get pretty temperate weather. It's almost comparable to California, so we're chilling here with the weather. But
what city are you in again?
I'm in a place called Vilcabamba, Ecuador, and we're like 1,500 meters up in the Andes. So it's a very temperate climate. It's pretty dry right now. It's the dry season, so we get wind that just kind of whips through and it dries everything up. Like your skin gets real dry. And then we have a wet season where it rains for 6 months, but it's I'd say it's a subtropical climate.
Yeah. I'm actually going to Ecuador at the end of the year, probably Cuenca.
But
we should talk about that after
yeah.
the interview.
Yeah, man. There's so much amazing stuff to see in Ecuador. We'll talk later, but let's hone it in. Let's talk about the tentative title that I've got for this chat is the current state and future of the fitness industry. So. Something I wanted to touch on with you, and I know you see it because anybody who puts out content is going to get trolled at some point or is going to get some vitriolic haters coming at their stuff. But we see a lot of people just kind of like bickering and bitching and a lot of childish, petty behavior going on the internet through avenues like YouTube. And I know I've mentioned this guy before, like Durian Rider. He looks mild now compared to some of these newer folks that are putting out content. So my first question is, why do you think a certain demographic seems to just gravitate towards all this controversy? And where would you like to see this trend going? Because I think that there is some value to, being able to openly critique other people, but it seems like there's so much just personal infighting and really childish behavior. And how do we move past this? How do we rise above this and kind of create an industry that's about good content rather than just like controversy?
I think the industry is moving in that direction. It's definitely the evidence-based fitness industry is growing quite fast. And you also see it in the kind of seminars and conferences that are emerging, like the Epic Fitness Summit, AFPT convention in Norway. Because they're great initiatives, and if we can keep doing that annually, I think that will further the industry in a very good way. But as you said, I think the reason that we are still seeing lots of bickering and all that kind of stuff is that it's what people want. There's a difference between what people want and what they need. And people will always like controversy. People will like famous figures fighting with each other. I noticed that very often people will try to sort of instigate. For example, it happens between me and Lane Norton, me and Eric Helms. I think that those two guys happens most often with, but we're always very cordial, friendly. We private message and stuff, and people they want us to fight, and it's like reality TV. That's the reason people like reality TV and soaps. They just like seeing people that are famous or that they can relate to, or just people in general fighting with each other, basically.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of just part of human nature to want to see a spectacle, and maybe for bringing in a certain demographic of 15 to 18-year-old kids on their moms or the computers that their moms bought them, it might be beneficial for bringing some of them into the whole evidence-based arena. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I really like to see more positive content-based stuff. I really appreciate people like you, even, like Lane Norton, Alan Aragon, Eric Helms. A lot of these people are putting out really good content, and without having to spark controversy and start fights. So yeah, that's something I would really like to see. Now there's all these like diet wars. Everybody likes to bicker and complain about like which diet is best. And if I like doing a high carb diet, I feel threatened by the high fat diet. And it seems like there's this huge battle over like carb and fat based diets. And to me, it seems like a moot point almost. Like there doesn't need to be a divide. They're both tools to be used accordingly. So,
Exactly.
So obviously these both have like their applications, and I know that you're very pragmatic with your use of diet with your clients and in your PT course. What are some of the deciding factors that help you prescribe the types of diets that you would prescribe to your clients, and how do you decide like what would be best for them?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are looking for like the one magic ratio of macronutrients.
What is
like
that? What's the magic ratio?
Exactly. That's what they want to hear. They want to find out the magic number. And the truth is there's no such thing. For one thing, it's nonsensical to use ratios in the first place. For protein, for example, you should base it on body weight. Fat, there's less research on it, so it's hard to base it on body weight. But and carbohydrates should be based on body weight and your activity level. So it makes no sense to use percentages in the first place, which would, for example, mean that if you're on a diet, your protein intake would go lower and lower and lower. But the real reason that it doesn't make sense to have like look for the one magic diet is that high carb and high fat diets can be effective. They can be equally effective, but not in the same individuals. You'll usually find that people vary in what I call carb tolerance. And you'll find that research also shows this. People respond differently to high carb and high fat diets.
Sorry, man. I got two. Hey, knock it off. All right.
Who wants to join?
Yeah, they want attention. They want to get fed.
But what research finds is that certain people who respond poorly to carbs, who have low carb tolerance, as I call it, they do better on, for example, high fat diet. But you also find that some people actually do better on like a diet with a very high glycemic index. And there are some indicators, like for example, there's a general trend towards the leaner you are, the better your carb tolerance. But insulin sensitivity, what this is based on, is just part of the story. You want to look at the relation between the actual insulin dynamics and blood glucose levels. So it's not just insulin sensitivity, it's the actual amount of insulin secretion, if that is appropriate given someone's level of insulin sensitivity to manage blood glucose levels. For example, what I just told you, the finding that some people respond best to a very high glycemic index diet, it was actually in overweight or even obese individuals. Wow. So you would expect those individuals to do best on a low carb diet, but sometimes it's just not the case. So you can do extensive lab work and actually test this, although we're still figuring out how exactly to test this and what the relevant indicators are. Most people obviously don't have access to this. So then what you want to do is you want to look at the psychological correlates of these physiological indicators. And usually that means looking at someone's cognitive performance or mental energy level and their appetite and how this fluctuates over time depending on or based on a certain meal that you have to design and so that it controls for a satiety index, for example. Otherwise, if people are more satiated, they'll say they don't have as much of an appetite, and satiety is also correlated to cognitive performance. So they'll also say that they function better, and it's not an effect of carbs or fats per se, but it's a satiety index. So you really need to be very strict in controlling this. You can just ask people, for example, what they prefer. Many people seem to
ask people what they prefer. Everyone's going to say high carb, high fat, high everything.
High everything, yeah. Although I think there's a trend in the current like evidence-based fitness industry to lean towards carbs.
Right.
And I think that's sort of a reaction against the carb phobia that you see more in Gen Pop. Mm-hmm. And obviously there are some indications like a lot of research, at least in endurance training, suggests that the more physically active you are, the more carbohydrates you need. People extrapolate this to resistance training and greatly overestimate how many carbohydrates they need because they're in the gym 3 hours a week instead of 4 hours a day for an athlete. And then they think, I need hundreds of grams of carbohydrates to fuel these workouts.
Yeah.
And you don't.
Yeah, it seems it goes both ways. You have carb phobia, and then you've got like carbphilia, where and they both can act in reactionary to the other ones, but I guess we're kind of moving towards a synthesis where people will realize that there's applications to a high fat diet in a broad spectrum of the population, as well as applications of a higher carb diet, of course. But we know that. I mean, we've seen the benefits and shortcomings of kind of both diets, as well as like just a mixed high calorie standard American crap diet. So, I mean, we can all agree that doesn't work. That high fat with high carb isn't necessarily going to work out well, at least for your blood work and health long term.
Yeah, it will. The main thing is that it will result in overeating in most people. Yeah. If you combine carbohydrates with fat, it has very positive effect on palatability, meaning people just like it very much, which means that they'll overeat on it. Mm-hmm. That's why pretty much all the junk food you can find in supermarkets or stores or wherever, it's usually either low or moderate protein, high carb, high fat. It's like the magic combination. Actually, if you just grab a stick of butter, add a lot of sugar, and then add chocolate or something, it's actually really good.
Yeah, you know what I used to do when I was a kid? My favorite meal, I would take like an English muffin, and I would melt butter on it, and I'd put it in the broiler with cinnamon and sugar with just a bunch of butter, and it would come out like a crispy donut or something.
Yeah, that's how easy it is to make, good tasting junk food.
Yeah, mix fat and sugar, and you've got great food. I mean, who doesn't want cheesecake? But
exactly.
You're right. It leads to overeating, and well, that maybe leads into another relevant question, and that's insulin resistance. Now, you see among the wars of the greatest diet, the so-called greatest diet, there's a lot of fighting over where insulin resistance comes from and what is the cause of the big surge in insulin resistance and consequently obesity in society today. So can you go ahead and weigh in on that?
Well, I think there is definitely a bilateral relationship between obesity and insulin resistance, where, for example, insulin resistance can cause low carb tolerance, which can cause fats to have cause you to gain more fat given a certain surplus of calories in a high carb diet. But I think that effect is generally outweighed by the effect of obesity on insulin resistance, because if you become obese, the chance of getting insulin resistant is huge. It's like that relationship is almost impossible to circumvent. If you get obese, you'll get all these metabolic disarrangements, and insulin sensitive inflammation will go up. You'll become insulin resistant, cardiac health, get more cardiovascular risk, cholesterol goes down the drain. It's pretty much inevitable. Even if your diet's really good, you can sometimes prolong it, but it's still a matter of body fat percentage. So body fat percentage has a really strong relationship, a really strong negative effect on insulin sensitivity. The reverse is much more debatable. So the idea that people are fat because they are now insulin resistant, I formulated more the other way around. People are insulin resistant because they are obese. And like I wrote the article review on biosignature, where I discussed the relation between hormones and fat gain, basically, and fat distribution in as much detail as anyone would ever care to know. And you basically find that what I just said, the relationship of fat on hormones is a lot stronger than the effect of hormones on fat gain.
Fascinating. So, I mean, it's almost a moot point of arguing what causes insulin resistance. A lot of these arguments to end up with people saying carbs cause insulin resistance. And then another side will say, well, no, not necessarily. Carbs do not cause insulin resistance. And there's plenty of evidence to show. And then, I mean, it's just like this huge war of cherry picking of evidence from both sides. So, I mean, I think it's really a big problem. The demonization of carbohydrates can become a problem because carbohydrates are a food source. I mean, they're a readily available, really fast acting food source that can be used as a tool. And I think when you overeat, I mean, obviously the evidence shows when you overeat any macronutrient, you're going to cause weight gain and insulin resistance. So
even protein, actually, it's just less because protein has a higher thermogenic effect. But the idea that you can gain fat eating protein, that's false. And actually, look at the overfeeding studies by Bray. He did some recent ones, and they measured like everything. They measured exactly where all the muscle and all the fat, all the lean body mass gains, everything went. It's like hugely well-controlled overfeeding studies, and they find that, you know, high protein, you'll gain less fat than if you would eat like a lot of sugar. Yeah. You'll still get fat. I mean, it's still energy balance still applies. You can't bypass physical laws.
Yeah, no, I mean that's another thing that it's such an easily torn down straw man argument when people like what's the guy's name, Gary Tobes. You know, I mean, this guy's, people just laugh when they hear his name now. He's been so discredited among a huge population because he's made ridiculous statements like calories don't matter. I mean, obviously, the amount of food you eat matters. If you eat 10 sticks of butter a day, you're not going to lose any weight, and you're probably going to gain a significant amount of weight.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm sure there's interesting little adjustments that would happen to hormone levels due to macronutrient partitioning, but it's not. And you eat too much, you're gonna gain weight. It's not
exactly. It's thermodynamics. I mean, the energy has to go somewhere. You consume a lot of energy, it will get stored.
Yeah,
that's how simple it is.
In that study that you just were referencing, how much did they overfeed in the protein overfeeding study?
Like a lot. in Bray studies, I think the minimum that I've seen is like 500 calories surplus, and some of them go into the thousands even.
Wow.
Yeah, so they really make people fat. That's nice because then you can see the real effects of what happens. Because you have a lot of these overfeeding studies on carbohydrates that people cite, like, you know, you don't get fat eating carbohydrates. And what they show is that, you know, over like a 2-day period, if you overeat on carbohydrates, you'll gain less fat than if you eat the same surplus in fat. But the difference is mainly that if you eat carbohydrates, it will first get stored as glycogen, which is like fuel for your muscles, in your muscles actually, and your liver. But what happens when those stores are full is that the excess of carbohydrate will be converted to fat. So it's a very temporal thing. And over the long term, when you're just eating a practical diet, it doesn't really matter because your body will auto-regulate the amount of glycogen that is stored and the amount of fat that will be gained. So these short-term overfeeding studies, they don't really have any application other than carb loading for either sports or a bodybuilding competition or something.
Yeah, and it seems like the literature is really lacking in properly formulated overfeeding studies that where it's like it's so easy to skew the data. I mean, you and I could design so many bad studies And you look at a lot of these studies and you just think, who the hell designed this? And what, I mean, obviously this person either knew the result that they were pushing for or are just completely clueless about what they're doing. And I would tend to skew towards them not being completely clueless as to what they're doing, and skewing data intentionally for whatever purpose.
For
But
sure, it's like, but it's funding. Some things are just much easier to get funding for, and there's also a huge bias that if something has been researched and there is a literature, then it's also a lot easier to do more research on that, because it's really easy to write a really good introduction or basically a sales pitch for it. Like, researchers found this and this, but there's this conflict, and I want to resolve that conflict.
yeah,
That's easy to get funding for. In contrast to, I have this revolutionary new theory, and it's entirely theoretical, but it would be really awesome to test this. And then people will say, if you have no basis for it in previous research.
yeah, no, there's definitely. I mean, the peer-reviewed system. There are so many positive things about it, but at the same time, it's very limited, and there can be a lot of stonewalling and political games that get played. And it's like, if you could have a great study that could be so relevant to a huge population, and it just, if there's not funding for it, there's not funding for it. Or if you step on the wrong toes in the process, you're not going to get funded. And you hear a lot of these stories, and there's actually been studies about medical fraud and fraud within. I mean, there was a study recently published, and I forget the exact title of it, but it was a rather sensational title, and I actually did not read the entire thing, but the byline was basically up to 30% of all medical studies could possibly be fraudulent and doctored. So it can become an issue.
Usually you have those things tend to get blown out of proportion. Usually it's like in a very limited field, because you have and they're very heavy skewed towards one researcher frauding data. And when that happens, usually every paper that researcher has ever offered will be either depublished basically, or they'll have to look at it again. And if someone's been doing that for a while, which can happen, then one researcher gets called out, possibly hundreds of papers get recalled, and then you have 30% in his field basically. Yeah. So it can just happen like that. But I actually posted on Facebook statistic recently, like over 30 Nobel Prize winning papers were originally rejected by peer review. Yeah. And there's actually bias towards revolutionary findings in peer review. It's obviously a lot easier to publish something that aligns with previous expectations to publish something that is completely new, because peer review will be like, not sure about this. Whereas if you show something that was already more or less known, then people will be like, yeah, okay, I know this, and they won't be as skeptical about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, imagine you're on a peer review board, and you've got all these papers coming through that you're reading and approving, and something comes by that you've never even considered this. This sounds so ridiculous to you. It could be totally true, but if it sounds too ridiculous, it's like, no, this is wrong. I've read the opposite of this so many times, check, we're out of here. So yeah, it could become an issue, but I think in the future there will definitely be more scrutiny on the peer reviewed system, and the peer reviewed system will be reviewed and probably be tightened up, and hopefully we'll see some better research getting out there. But so yeah,
I think fitness is getting there. Exercise science and nutrition in particular, because of the obesity epidemic. Yeah. We're seeing a lot more research, a lot more relevant research. So that's good.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk a little bit. Let's move on to another thing that people like to argue a little bit about, and that's the term metabolic damage. Metabolic adaptation is another term that people use for it, but metabolic damage, Lane Norton gets into a lot of scuffles about this with some people that are I mean, like Lyle McDonald is very critical of Lane Norton and many other people. Anybody who disagrees with them, it seems. But and so yeah, metabolic damage. What's metabolic damage, and is this worth even fighting over? What are your thoughts on the whole metabolic adaptation thing?
Yeah, to start with Lane, because usually these type of debates revolve around Lane Norton. He actually didn't coin the term. He just used it. I think it was Scott Abel, not quite sure. That some
A bodybuilder
big,
guy, right? That older bodybuilder guy?
Yeah, that guy. I think he coined it, and I think Lane also never said that there was actually real damage, in the sense that the adaptation that takes place, researchers call this adaptive thermogenesis, that effect is actually permanent. So, or at least that it's, if you get back to the same body weight you were at before, that your metabolism will then still be lower. And that's not the case. And I don't think, I'm not sure if Lane argues that, but he doesn't, I don't think he actually believes that there's like your thyroid gets broken or something if you go on a heavy deficit.
Yeah, like if you do it, so the theory, I think people take everything out of context a lot of the times, and will really bring it to these hyperbolic extremes. But I guess what is the theory is that when you diet for a long time, you restrict your calories, you'll get to a point where, I mean, it has to do with the sticking point during dieting and rebounding. So, I mean, it's like your metabolism slows down to such an extent that you're kind of screwed more long term because of the damage that you've done through the dieting. And
yeah, and most of the effects of on your energy expenditure, which is usually what people mean when they say metabolism, most of the effects on your energy expenditure are very well predictable. A researcher called Hall, I forgot his first name, he has actually already created statistical models that can predict with something like 98% accuracy, I think was one of his latest models. They can already predict exactly what will happen to your energy expenditure and your weight. So, and I think Forbes has also done a lot of research on the ratio of muscle to fat that will be lost. So we're actually at the point in research where we can predict with, very high accuracy already what will happen to your metabolism. And that's because what happens to your metabolism, your energy expenditure, is predictable in many ways. If you restrict your calories, you'll find that your metabolism slows down, and that's because of very predictable factors. If you eat less, the thermic effect of food will be less, which decreases energy expenditure. If you diet, your body weight will decrease. That will obviously also decrease basal metabolic rate, because body weight and basal metabolic rate are very strongly linked. Especially fat-free mass that will be lost, which will decrease energy expenditure. So you're looking at very predictable factors, and there really isn't any magic or damage in the sense of being permanent deregulation. It's just adaptation. And what I also mentioned is that people will look at these things and they say like, yeah, the human body wants to be fat, but these exact same mechanisms prevent you from getting fat, because these exact same mechanisms act in reverse. If you gain weight, your metabolism will increase, your satiety will increase. If you get fat, you won't be hungry as much, and you'll have a much higher energy expenditure. So it's these same factors that prevent weight gain, as well as they prevent weight loss. So really what your body just does, it's an adaptive system that tries to control, or it's an adaptive system that is set to maintaining homeostasis. That's basically the way to say it, because there's no intent or anything like that.
Yeah, and it's not a closed system. It's an open system within a greater open system, which is you have input from food, you have feast and famine cycles, you have seasonal cycles. So there's everything seems perfectly balanced in context, but maybe when you have a more extreme situation where we're slightly divorced from the natural cycles of life, such as modern society, we have so much food available all the time. So it makes it really easy for us to become obese and insulin resistant. And then if we do diet down, we can immediately bounce back and gorge on whatever foods we want because we have it available to us. So
Yeah, that's the main thing with the obesity epidemic. We're still, and that's also the core of the argument of like the paleo crowd, which is just a very good, solid argument that we are still genetically very, very much alike as we were when we were hunter-gatherers. And now we are put in this different environment where food is readily available, and we create all these foods that are super palatable and have super high energy densities. It's no wonder we get fat. There really isn't that much magic. And there's also a definitely lesser component of activity level. You know, now we have chairs and we have a toothbrush that automatically brushes our teeth.
Yeah, we don't have to move our hands, brush our damn teeth.
Exactly. It's like all these things, they add up, you know, sedentary office jobs. But again, these effects aren't nearly as large as many people like to believe. They think that hunter-gatherers, you know, were active all day, but there's actually a lot of research to suggest that hunter-gatherers are already lazy, just like we were.
Yeah, I think that they would have worked. I've seen, well, it wouldn't be in studies, but anthropological research, which suggests that they only worked like 3 to 4 hours per day. And the rest of the time. And when you look at baboons, they don't, you know, I mean, that's not comparable to humans, but to a certain extent it is. Their lifestyle is very, they have a low stress lifestyle. Actually, all the stress that baboons have within their society is the stress that they inflict upon each other through, you know, just tormenting each other with their social hierarchy.
That's very much like humans.
No way. It goes back to what we were just talking about with trolling on the internet. And
yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So speaking of dieting in the fitness industry, what do you think are the biggest traps that people fall into when they're trying to lose weight, or, you know, dieting in general, whether the diet is geared towards building muscle or losing weight? What are some of the biggest traps that you see people falling into?
That's a difficult one. There are a lot of different things that go wrong, but
just throw a few out there. Throw like some recent ones that you've seen. I mean, you don't even have to, don't order them or anything. I know that's like really hard to do.
Yeah, you get diet hopping, just like you have program hopping. People will try ketogenic diet. They go through the adaptation phase. They're like, this is terrible. They go to super high carb, and that doesn't work either. Or they don't monitor how they're progressing, so they don't really know. And at some point, they'll just conclude, like, I'm not losing weight anymore. And I've seen this so often in clients, and women in particular, because without being sexist, women just aren't, on average, driven as much, or they don't look at the objective data as much, and they tend to go by their feelings more. So they'll say, I'm not losing weight anymore. And you know, I reply, I just calculated the moving average, your rolling 7-day average of your weight, and it's definitely decreasing. So it's not really a question. You are losing weight. The question is that they may not be happy with the amount of weight loss.
Mm-hmm. Or some people may not be happy with their body image, no matter how much weight they lose. And you see them, they lose so much weight, and they're like, oh, I'm stuck. And you're like, look, maybe you should slow down. Maybe your body's telling you that it wants to, you know, maybe chill out for a little bit at this weight and adjust.
Yeah, that's also definitely something. Not going by what I call the optimal rate of weight loss, which depends on a lot of factors, but people will either try to stick really close to maintenance and let basically nothing happen. And that's usually what happens at maintenance. If you just eat a certain calorie level and you're already pretty advanced, usually you'll find that not really anything happens anymore. You need to either drive towards a surplus or a deficit of calories to.
So you mean like if somebody were trying to lose weight and they're relatively lean, they're trying to get sub 10% body fat, and they're maybe at like a 5%, 10% deficit, that might be a little bit too mellow of a deficit to be losing.
Well, if as there is an actual deficit, it can 5% can definitely work, especially at 10%, 10% body fat.
But how hard is it to stay exactly within, you know, I mean, there's a 5% to 10% error range with most clients anyways. So
Yeah, definitely. That's where, depending on the compliance of the clients, many of my clients are quite compliant. They're like the people that are already at least intermediate level, looking to take things to the next level, and they want to really maximize muscle growth and fat loss. Obviously, preferably at the same time, although that's not possible. Not maximizing it, that's not possible. You can still gain muscle while losing fat.
Yeah.
But
especially if you're less, I mean, if you're very overweight, then that year of like dropping 50 pounds of fat, you're going to gain a significant amount of muscle if you do it right.
Yeah, exactly.
But like for me or you to lose body fat and gain a bunch of muscle, it's probably not gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to happen anymore. So
sadly,
yeah, and that's also another thing. People will either when they try to stick at maintenance, or they go for like, they have these figures in their head. They say I should lose 2 pounds per week. Especially for most women, that's just entirely unrealistic. And you can lose 2 pounds of weight a week, but it's not going to reflect very positively on your body composition. You'd be much better off losing 1 or even half a pound while actually gaining muscle instead of losing a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
And your body composition will look a lot better in 3 months' time. So that's another thing. That's actually a mistake I made. I personally made during my initial diets. I actually followed Lon McDonald's Rapid Fat Loss Handbook, I think it's called.
Okay, yeah, that's like really aggressive dieting, right? Like
yeah.
So you probably lost a little bit of lean mass there.
Yeah, more than a little bit.
Oh man,
so
the harder.
Yeah, that's how I sort of never got above like 82 kilograms. Mm-hmm. So what happened, and that's also what you see often, is that during a bulk they gain too much fat, and during the diet they lose too much muscle mass, so that in the long term they sort of stay at the same body composition. And all that really happens is that they get beefy during a bulk and they look scrawny during a cut.
Yeah, so you either always look puffy or stringy. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Nice. Well, those are some pretty big traps. All right, so we talked a little bit about like where the fitness industry is now and how we both like to see it going more towards content, positive content that's worthwhile, as well as like evidence-based stuff. The future of the fitness industry, we've kind of already touched on this, but where would you like to see the fitness industry go in the next like 5 years? And do you think that differs from where you think it actually will go? So maybe we could talk about in the ideal perfect world where like rainbows come out of our butts when we fart, and then the real world where there's people like Vegan Gains getting 200,000 views just making hateful vitriolic videos.
Yeah, we can actually get into Vegan Gains if you want, because I promised a few of my readers that I would.
Yeah, people have been asking I've been afraid. I don't want them to come after me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I don't think a single one of my followers will care if he goes after me. So
I don't care. I've actually been a vegan, not like an ethical vegan, so he can rip on me for that. Because at one point I was eating a vegan diet because I thought it maybe was the healthiest way, and I experimented with it, and for me it didn't work out. And yeah,
that's the thing. You get people who try different diets, or if someone's a vegan. I have no issue with that whatsoever. The issue I have with Vegan Gains is that he's like, everyone should become a vegan, stupid meat eaters.
It's a religious crusade.
Yeah, and that's also what you see in zealots of like any kind, whether it's keto or super high carb or any kind of paleo, any kind of sort of
types of exercise. I mean, there's people who are zealots about this is the only type of exercise that works. Yeah. People love to latch on to these ideas. I mean, we're almost going towards like a sociological analysis in this podcast, and I like that. I love thinking about systems and stuff like that. But yeah, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, that's just. I mean, that's how it is. People. That's also to get back to your question. Again, the discrepancy between what people want to hear, what they need. People want to hear about fancy new workouts, new exercises that are much better than any other exercise. They want to learn about all this, the new cool diet, whether it's high carb or high fat, doesn't matter. I put a new name on it. You get the same concepts, cycling back and forth throughout the years. People want to hear about magic quick fixes. People like to hear about supplements that are really effective. People love to pay a lot of money for a supplement that does very, very little. Because popping a pill is easy.
The miracle pill diet.
Exactly, the magic pill. That's what people want to hear, and the things people need to hear are that there is no one magic program. No, it's the boring stuff. So. Yeah.
And it's actually hard work over a long period of time and adherence to whatever diet you're doing, even if you're changing it every few months. It's like adherence and hard work is crucial. But who the hell wants to hear that? Like, give me a pill.
Exactly. It's a system, and you optimize the system, and it will be different for different clients. That's why the job of being a personal trainer or physique coach exists in the first place. If there was one way to do it, then it'd be easy. You get, a Facebook post would do it. So it's just not the case. Like we touched on with carbohydrates versus fat. If you, another fact about that is that in aggregate, if you look at the effect of the carb to fat ratio on weight loss success in research, it's a completely neutral effect.
Yeah.
And in part, probably because you get people with high and low carb tolerance that are both in the population, and a lot of people just have neutral carb tolerance, so it evens out. And if you look at the average of everything, you'll find that there is actually no effect at all.
And you could probably really easily design studies to skew in either direction by cherry picking your populations, looking at their past history, their, just several factors that you could cherry pick to make it look like a low carb or a high carb diet are more effective for weight loss. I think it all just comes down to individual preference and, what people's goals are. It's like at one point, a high carbohydrate diet might be ideal, but then switching that up, doing a phase shift in your diet might yield awesome results as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like most people will have phases where they change things. I mean, I fluctuate between having basically 3 and 5 meals, depending on the period in which I live, depending on my activity level. So whether I do intermittent fasting or not, those aren't, the magical necessary ingredients. They're just things that are sometimes better suited physiologically for certain periods, and given certain factors. Like intermittent fasting has potential downsides for your metabolism, not for your thyroid or anything, but it can compromise energy expenditure. And those things that you can tweak, but the things that really matter, energy balance, long-term compliance, that's the bread and butter, basically. That's the really important stuff.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this comes down to compliance, and compliance. A lot of it comes down to personal preference. So, look, I enjoy like fatty, high protein, high fat, salty foods. Like I love that. I love like creamy sauces and stuff. I like me some carbs too, but whenever I go over to eating a more higher carbohydrate diet, I usually end up kind of skewing back to the high fat diet. And that's just for me. That's what works for me. And I don't think everybody should do it, but I think people should have some non-biased information. And even though a lot of my content skews towards like ketogenic diet and a lot of my stuff is about that, that's only because like that's the little void that I'm filling with my content. Like that's an opening that I see, and I don't see anybody else putting out valuable, unbiased. I mean, like, everyone says they're unbiased, right? Content about that. So, it all comes down to what do you feel like doing? What do you like doing? What can you do long term?
Yep, exactly. To get back to vegan gains.
Yeah, exactly.
I had never heard of this guy until a week ago or something, and then suddenly, like, 5 people asked me to comment on his stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, to get through it, didn't really prepare it, but I asked some of my readers to get like a list of claims from them, because a lot of people say, what do you think about this? And they link to an hour-long video or someone's channel. And I don't know what to do with that. So I actually asked them to get a list of claims. I'll comment on those. So claims include that vegans have higher testosterone. That's just blatantly false. Most research shows that people that have meat in their diet actually have higher testosterone, or at least vegans have lower testosterone than other people. And all of potential good reasons for this, cholesterol intake, fat intake, all very important for the production of anabolic hormones. Certain minerals like zinc that are can be difficult to obtain enough of in a vegan diet.
Lipids as well. I mean, like DHA. I mean, how are you going to get DHA on a vegan diet unless you're supplementing with algae pills, which is debatable if those are even bioavailable. And
exactly. So that's just blatantly false. He said that meat is very insulinogenic, has a very causes large insulin spike. And the thing is that many people think that the glycemic and the insulin index are purely related to the carbohydrate content of foods, whereas in truth, especially insulin index is also strongly related to protein, because protein is insulinogenic. If you consume amino acids, it will cause the release of insulin in your body. So meat, which is high in protein, by that reason causes a significant insulin release. And that doesn't have any relationship with acute fat gain or anything like that, because it's a natural, it's a storage hormone, yes, and you're still looking at energy balance across the end of the day. For example, I think research from Philips, I'm not sure if you already published this, but it showed that something like 30 grams of whey already caused an insulin release that was sufficient to completely, or at least largely blunt fat oxidation, meaning that right after you've consumed a whey shake, protein, your body's not burning fat anymore, or at least very little. And it may actually be storing a little bit of fat. But that's just, the minuscule time frame right after drinking the whey shake. Mm-hmm. What you're really concerned with is the day or even the week-long average of energy balance. That's what you need to look at. Anyway.
Well, even if that argument, the argument that meat is, I mean, it's a completely hypocritical argument, because the diet that he promotes and kind of the guru that he's following, he comes in the vein and the lineage of this guy, Durian Ryder, who is like one of the biggest buffoons on YouTube. I mean, this guy is like full on, he cherry picks every single bit of information he puts out. It's completely skewed, religiously biased, very, very hateful, vitriolic. And by no means are all vegans like this. I got plenty of vegan friends. They're great people. They don't care what I eat. They'll watch me eat meat. They don't like judge people. It's this very specific part of every group, any population that loves to latch onto things and just make it their whole lens and project everything through that, whether it be, workout, keto, vegan, whatever. But within his like dietary recommendations, these people like Durian Ryder are recommending you eat white pasta. He pours a bunch of white sugar on his cereal every day, but then he's going to come out here and say that meat is insulinogenic, and that's not. You don't want to eat that. That'll give you cancer. It's going to raise IGF-1 and insulin. You're eating freaking pasta and you're pouring white sugar on your cereal, but that's okay because it's vegan, right? It's like it's such a skewed thing. Keep
exactly.
On. You've always got a nice list of points here. Keep going.
Yeah, and the main thing is that the whole net effect, meat scores medium on the insulin index. So especially compared to, say, pasta, if you're a vegan and you're eating pasta, meat is not the cause of most of the insulin release in your diet. I mean,
but you get to be selective when you're like, when it's a religious argument, you get to select the evidence that applies to you.
Exactly. Other things are studies showing that vegans are healthier than non-vegans. Actually, a few studies have found this, or most have found neutral effects overall. But the thing is that this is so heavily confounded by, the main problem with epidemiological research in general is that if you look at vegans and you look at non-vegans, when you look at non-vegans, you're looking at average Joes. You're looking at just the average,
McDonald's.
Exactly, Burger King and McDonald's kind of eating. Fat people with an office job that don't do any kind of physical exercise. Tons of those people are in sample A. Then you look at vegans. Vegans are, by definition, so much more health conscious. I mean, anyone who is a vegan, who is willing to sacrifice and completely avoid eating so many entire food groups, That's someone that is very, very concerned about their diet. And even if they are wrong about most of it, you'll still find that, like the very basics, if they eat less, they're more physically active. Those things, they matter so much more than whether or not you're eating chicken or not, those are the things that in
It's
large
a population that's naturally making better health choices in every area of their life. So of
exactly.
course, some studies.
Even if they are misinformed about many of them, just the fact that they are concerned with their health and the other population really isn't, that's the main difference that you're looking at. And you can try to correct for that confounder analysis, as it's called in statistics. You can try to do that, but there is a limit. You can only confound for things that you know. So the whole problem is that there are so many factors. There is no way to get variables in your data set for every single confounder and actually control for all of that. It just doesn't work. So
And the only relevant study would almost be like a twin study, where you take a twin from the time it's born. You got a vegan twin and a carnivore twin, and then
that would be an awesome study.
Yeah,
but
the Nazis, they were really into the twin studies back in the day. They were very interested in twins and the genetic studies of that. And
when you have no ethical boundaries, you can do a lot of cool research. That's for sure.
If only the vegans could have the power of the Nazis, then
no. It would be a bad world.
No, I want to just clarify that, like, I don't think anything is wrong with veganism. I just think evangelicals shove it down your throat, make everybody feel guilty for their lifestyle is not the way to go about it. And it's not going to help your cause. It might get other sociopaths who gravitate towards like hateful behavior and gravitate towards you telling people they deserve to get cancer and die. Because he does say that in his videos. He said that Furious Pete deserved cancer and he was taunting him for having testicular cancer. Like, just really silly, childish behavior. And that's going to attract a certain segment of the population to your shit, but that's not the right population that you want for your movement if you want to make it bigger.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're in this industry, you should really ask yourself if you were just concerned with having as many followers as possible, or if you care about who actually follow your work. And there are a lot of things that will generate controversy and get you views and shares on Facebook, but they are not the kind of things that will actually contribute to long-term success, and also actually financially. At least I know very little about marketing, but what I see is that my conversion rates, insofar as I measure them at all, in basically anything, if I promote something or I sell something or whatever, my conversion rates are huge, even though I don't do any marketing, because people know that I very rarely promote anything. And when I do, they know that it's usually something that I really stand behind. It's something that I've researched well. If I put out content, I want to make sure it's great content. So this also for my PT course or anything. People know. I mean, they follow you. I have so many clients. That's the thing. Most fitness professionals, they don't realize it's the people that follow you for a long time that you get a real relationship with. Often clients email me and I will say something or make some comment, and they will say, yeah, I think you said that before. And I have to think like, oh yeah, I think 4 years ago I said that in a Facebook comment. And they'll have to remember.
Yeah.
I mean, people know, they follow you. It's not like you can just get away with all that shit that gets you instant views. The only people that will follow you then are the people that are attracted to that kind of behavior.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the way that he set up his channel, I'm not even sure if he like monetized it, because you can monetize YouTube channels, and if it's not monetized, it might protect you to a certain extent from copyright infringement stuff. But it seems like he's not. It seems like the aim of Vegan Gains is not to become economically viable. It's not like it's not like a business model. It seems like it's just purely for attention and energy, and an almost sociopathic, psychopathic behavior where it's like you're just feeding off the controversy, feeding off of the energy that's being put forth. And that's that's he's doing a great job at that. He's attracting plenty of attention, and I think it's unfortunate that people are sharing his videos, but you know, I mean, I watch them because I am fascinated by human behaviors, especially outliers like sociopaths and psychopaths.
Mhm.
That's why people like watching Breaking Bad and these shows, what's it, House of Cards. Shows like that are huge because it's fascinating to look inside the human mind. And but yeah, I think we're looking at kind of an individual who maybe as a child, you know, we all want to lash out in certain ways when we're young, especially. But he's probably like 22 years old. This kid still lives at his mom's house, and I'm not bashing him. That's cool. If you live in your mom's house, that's fine. He's really into video games. Like, he's got the game screens behind him. He's you know, I mean, it's like when we're young, we want to lash out at the world. And if we latch on to some idea like, you know, veganism, and we can project all the problems in the world onto this one little tiny issue, it gives us a lens. And then the internet just allows us to throw it out there and get loads of attention for it. So yeah, that's kind of my skeletal take on what I see going on.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I mean, I really don't know the guy, Vegan Gaze, but you see that a lot in the industry. That's why most politicians suck. I mean, there really aren't any really good incentives. You know, if you just look at the career prospect of a politician, it's not really good, not from a happiness or a financial perspective. So you're looking at a rare few individuals that are really in it for the greater good, you know, pure do-gooders. But most people, most politicians are kind of just in it for the fame and the political power, which is
the back room. You want the backroom perks. You want the, you know, you want your name to have a certain clout to it. You want to feel like you've got power. So yeah, I wish more people would put out valuable content and pay attention to valuable content, but maybe it just goes in waves, you know. And it's like, the YouTube's only been around for a few years. I mean, back when I was a kid, you had to speak to people's face. You had to, you know, if you had a problem with somebody, you'd have to like talk to them, or you might have some back alley stuff where, like, you know, some kid says something to another kid behind his back, and then it gets around to him. But now it's like the internet gives you can snipe. You can snipe people with little games like this. And I guess maybe we're just seeing that manifest in this specific industry, and just kind of maybe we'll see where it goes. I hope it doesn't blow up, and I hope more people, I hope we don't get like copycat criminals like this.
I don't think it will go downhill from here. I mean, it's in every industry. In every industry, you have these kind of things. I mean,
it's like tabloid filth. You have TMZ and shit. You know, it's like,
yeah. I mean, I was a business consultant before I went full-time entrepreneurial, and you get. So I looked into basically the largest international and like national level companies in the world, like brands that almost everyone will know. And you expect it to be like super high end, you know, everything that goes on in these kind of companies is like the fanciest kind of technology with the smartest people ever. And they have these awesome work protocols, and, you know, everything is tightly organized. No, they're just people. If you just look around you, and it's also, especially with doctors, you just look around you, you pick some guy off the street, that guy could have been a doctor. Yeah. At some point, that guy, maybe his parents or her parents or anything in the environment, just in kind of predispose that individual to say at some point, you know, what are you going to study? I'll go for medicine.
I want to make money. I want to be a doctor.
Yeah. Maybe it was money.
Doctor or a lawyer.
There wasn't really any, often there isn't that much deliberation behind such a choice in the first place. I think that's usually underrated, the kind of thing that you study, at least in the Netherlands, what I've seen. People don't realize what a huge impact that will have on the rest of your life. But anyway, you know, that a random person just thought, you know, they're smarter than average for sure. Most doctors are smarter than the average individual. But by and large, if you went to university and, you know, you're at that kind of population, just look around you, pick a random individual, that person chose to be a doctor. That's the kind of people that you are dealing with when you're looking at a doctor. It's not like some kind of magical person or
it's not like these are supermen that somehow, you know, have a higher level of analysis than everybody else. It's like, you got a PhD, that's great. You worked hard. You show that you pay your dues. You know, I mean, I've got a degree. I've only got a bachelor's degree. But I sat in these biology classes. I sat in these like lower level mathematics classes, which I hated. You know, I don't know how you got a statistics degree. I was good at math, but I was just, man, I never liked doing it. But yeah, and you look around, and I mean, even some of the friends that I had when I was in college, and it was like, you're going to be a doctor? You don't, you get surprised at the type of individuals. And some of the kids that I went to college with and lived in the dorms with, they are doctors now. And I wouldn't bring my child to these doctors. I think it's really important that people very intelligently select the what they study, like you said, because we need good doctors who have good rational thinking skills and don't just repeat and prescribe. And let's wrap this up. Let me just do some fun questions for you. What was the last workout you did?
Actually, that was yesterday. I had really bad stomach cramps. I did heavy front squats because it was on my program. Couldn't skip it, of course.
Heavy front squats? Oh man!
I'm with reverse bands actually, so it's even worse for your core. I imagine that's what giving birth must feel like.
Yeah. Do you do some Kegels while you do it? You do Kegels? Squeeze.
No, I just suffered. That's what I did. That was my workout.
So they got a nice gym there in Yucatan?
Yeah, actually,
Bands? Wow.
several really good ones.
Nice. How long have you been there?
Month or so. Nice. A bit longer now.
Nice. Yeah, see, Menno knows how to vacation. You don't vacation for 5 days. You go somewhere where you're able to like chill out for a couple weeks or a month. Okay, so that was the last workout you did. What was the last meal that you ate?
I just ate quark with blackberries, an absurd amount of sweetener, and the cheesecake from Chris Sugared on T-Nation with avocado, which is really awesome.
Nice. All right. What was the here's the last question. We'll let all the hipsters judge you now. What was the last song or album you listened to on your iPod or your computer?
Okay, actually, I watched Mad Max Fury Road 2 days ago or something. One of the downsides of living in Mexico or anything like that is that you don't get to see 3D movies. So yeah, I just saw it, and I thought it would be a really bad action flick, but it was surprisingly daring and just high, grim, gory, awesome action flick. So I really recommend it if you're into that kind of movie without any storytelling.
I'm gonna check it out. Yeah, I just like good movies. I mean, I don't care. I've seen great action movies that have horrible stories, and I also like, I'm into everything.
Yeah, this movie just says like, storyline. We don't do storyline.
You know what I watched? The last movie I watched, and it was really, really funny. It was Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart, and it was like a white guy, black guy, stupid comedy movie called Get Hard. Will Ferrell is a yuppie that gets sentenced to go to prison. And he's trying to like learn how to survive in prison, and he hires a black guy to teach him the ropes. It's really funny.
I'll check it out. What's it called? Get Hard?
Get Hard. Yeah. Don't look that up on Google.
Yeah. I imagine I'll get different kind of results.
Not Google Images.
Yeah. Oh, but anyway, I was talking about the song. So I downloaded the soundtrack because it was actually made by Junkie XL. I thought that was like one of those bad DJs, but the soundtrack was obviously made with someone with a huge amount of talent. So I downloaded the soundtrack, and a few of those songs were really awesome. I actually like soundtracks to listen to because most songs are kind of bland. They're made for the radio and music videos, and research actually shows that the songs people like are actually the monotonous songs. People always say, yeah, I want something different. No, they don't. People actually like familiar sounds. If psychological research has looked into this, and people basically like sort of loops that in their head provide calm, basically, because if it's a really predictable pattern, then that gives a sense of calm in your brain. So those are the songs people really like. But movie soundtracks are just so much more intense. They're made for the purpose of providing you with a very specific kind of emotion for that particular scene. So I really like, especially action movie soundtracks for in the gym.
How about did you see Interstellar? That had one of the most amazing soundtracks. It was a Hans Zimmer soundtrack.
Yeah,
Oh man,
that's fucking awesome.
oh yeah, like the Heat soundtrack. That's so fucking. Oh man, awesome. All right, well this has been fun. You guys got a little glimpse into the wild mind of Menno here, and into my mind and opinions as well. So I hope this was valuable to everybody. I hope people realize that when we were talking about vegans, like neither one of us has an issue with veganism at all. It's the tactics that people use, and it's it's like the energy that people put out there that creates negativity or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, you guys check out BayesianBodybuilding.com. He's got a PT course out there. When is your next PT course?
Not sure yet. It's either going to be like the end of this year or the start of 2016. There are a lot of people that still enroll in the current one, but it's about halfway done. So either you would have to take the exam because there's an actual certificate that you can get. Either you take the exam during the next course, or just have to work pretty hard.
Nice. Well, check out his PT course. The next round. Highly valuable information on his website that he puts out there for free. Are you taking on clients right now?
Yep, at least some.
He's taking on some clients. I know several people who have used Menno, and they rave about how good he is and how much attention to detail he pays. So you're looking for a good coach, hit up Menno at BayesianBodybuilding.com. Check out Hans Zimmer soundtracks. Don't watch Vegan Gains. And yeah, you got
that sums it up.
right on, man. Any closing statements? Anything you want to say?
No, I think that summed it up really well.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you next time, Menno. It's been good having you on, and I'm going to
My pleasure.
Fishing now.